The Office of Cannabis Management is entering its second year managing legal marijuana operations in New York State. On Wednesday, the office released a report highlighting the progress being made by the department in year 2 of operations. 12 News' Kyle Spisak is live in the studio with some of those milestones being reported. Kyle?
Illegal recreational cannabis is a booming market across New York State, but that did not come without some issues in the industry's initial rollout plans. Those issues, though, have not stopped the marketplace in New York from growing into a near billion-dollar business. According to the Office of Cannabis Management, across New York State, 261 licensed adult-use cannabis dispensaries are now open for business.
To date, we've issued well over 1,000 licenses across our ecosystem, including now 300 licenses for retail operators in the state. And that's over and on top of the nearly 500 licenses that we had issued in the 2 years preceding.
Brick and mortar stores are not the only aspect of the industry that created a buzz around the Empire State. Sales are also extremely high across New York. The OCM reports the total sales revenue over the past 2 years is valued at just under $1 billion.
It's looking like the average per dispensary is about $500,000 per month, right? And you've got some stores, now that's an average. So some stores are pulling that up because there's a few doing $1 million or more per month, and there's some doing less. But that's the average.
Illicit cannabis shops, which were a huge area of concern around Binghamton, are dwindling down according to the OCM as a result of the successful legal market.
We've padlocked well over 1,000 stores since this kind of initiative went into full steam in May. This initiative that we're calling the Illicit Cannabis Enforcement Task Force, the ICE-T Task Force.
And during yesterday's meeting, the New York State Cannabis Control Board noted another 68 licenses were issued to cannabis distributors, processors, and retail dispensaries across New York. Live in the studio, I'm Kyle Spisak, 12 News.